17 days of testimony, 64 witnesses, 387 exhibits, 7.5 years since the murder, 2 years since Richard Allen was arrested, 21 days since opening statements, and 4 days of deliberations that lasted approximately 19 to 20 hours. And now we have a verdict. Guilty of all counts against Richard Allen. That's the very latest from here. We're going to send it back to you, Scott.
Anne Marie and Bob Siegel in Delphi, and they're going to be standing by waiting to see if we might be able to talk to either the prosecutors in the case or the defense team, if the jury may be willing to speak. If that happens, we'll bring that to you. And certainly if we hear from either family of these two young girls who died 7.5 years ago, we will bring that to you as well. I want to bring into our conversation Katie Jackson-Lindsay, who's been the 13 News legal analyst throughout these 19 or 20 days worth of coverage of the Delphi murders trial. She's been with us every night on the Delphi debrief. What's your reaction to Richard Allen being found guilty on all 4 charges?
As a defense attorney, I'm surprised, but you can never really be surprised by a verdict. In this case, we weren't allowed in the courtroom, and so it's hard to get a real feel for the evidence and the impact that it was having. But this jury did their job. They worked hard for hours, for 4 days of deliberations. They asked questions, and that is the verdict that they reached. So I'm surprised based on what I understand the burden of proof to be, but we have to trust them. We have to trust our system.
Let's go back and, for those of you who have been following this trial and maybe those of you who have not, let's go back to the state's, evidence that they began putting on. A couple of their early witnesses were describing Bridge Guy, the guy that we've all seen on the video, but describing a much younger man, describing a man in his 20s, a tall, muscular man with brown, poofy hair. That wasn't 40-year-old Richard Allen at that point. And so, there were the thoughts that maybe the witnesses had the wrong person, or that they were describing someone that was quite different than Richard Allen.
Agreed, and that was the first evidence that we heard, right? That we heard as the public, that the jury heard, that there was this youthful man with boyish, youthful looks, with longer hair. And we as the public, not the jury, but as the public, we also were aware of those sketches that were created as a result of this witness testimony, or these witnesses giving these statements to the police. And we knew that wasn't Richard Allen. And so that was the first impression of the state's evidence. And as it went on even longer, it seemed to be more of that, where they had evidence that could be Richard Allen, but could also leave room for reasonable doubt. But I think ultimately what got them over the finish line, and rightfully so, was those confessions. We've said over and over and over, it's hard to convince a jury that your client didn't do something as a defense attorney if your client has said repeatedly that he did, and emphatically in the way that Bob described, especially with the call with his mother. So I think that's probably what got the jury there, and you can understand how they could reach that conclusion with those confessions. And
remember, as this case was beginning and the state was presenting the case, the jury was hearing these emotional confessions that Richard Allen was making from prison. He did talk to his mother, he did talk to his wife, and each time would say, I did it. Now, there was one recording where he said, I did it, I think I did it, I don't know if I did it. And then, of course, there was a lot of testimony brought in during the trial where psychologists were brought in that had been talking to Richard Allen in prison during the time that he was awaiting this trial to start. And there was a lot of testimony that he was going through a mental health breakdown, that he was going through, various problems while he was being held for 13 months in solitary confinement. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned, maybe the confessions were the very thing that the jury said, no, that's the guy.
Right, and I mean, that is very strong evidence. Having been a deputy prosecutor myself, if you have a case with a confession, you almost consider that case a slam dunk. I don't think the prosecution took for granted that there are other evidence that was a challenge and considered that a slam dunk, but obviously they put that together very well and presented it in a way that it was compelling to the jury. And so I think if we were able to talk to that jury, we would learn that that is what took them over the edge towards guilty.
All right, let's talk about what they called the magic bullet. Okay, I guess we've got some new information from Anne Marie Tiernan. So let's go back outside the Delphi courthouse. Anne Marie, what have you got?